Hi there, my name is Kara Smith, Senior Director of Channel Enablement here at VIOLIN Systems. I am excited to be joined today by one of our long-standing partners. We've got Craig Stein, co-founder and solutions architect at Mirazon. Craig, thanks for joining us all the way from Louisville, Kentucky.
Hi, Kara. It's great to be here with you.
Great. Hey, so before we jump in, Craig, tell us a little bit about Mirazon and your company's expertise.
Sure. Mirazon is an IT consulting company and value-added reseller located in Louisville, Kentucky. And so we partner with companies to deliver what we call best-of-breed infrastructure solutions. And we offer both managed services and also project-based IT consulting. So what makes us unique is our deep expertise and the ability to kind of solve problems beyond what a typical MSP can handle.
Great. So today we are covering a topic that impacts IT managers, managed service providers, really anyone that's managing their own data center, and that's the impact of aging infrastructure. So we've talked a lot and we've identified 3 clear and obvious risks and concerns that should be considered. Can you walk us through the first consideration to take under advisement?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that is a big concern is just the failure rates of aging equipment, and it shouldn't really come as a surprise that most everything in IT has a expected service life, and so anything that has moving parts such as hard drives or fans, for instance, will eventually wear out and fail. And so I have a chart here to show you where we can kind of see the increased failure rate of gear as it gets older and as components wear out. And that can impact your organization in many ways. So on the chart, we show, most importantly, the yellow line that just shows the failure rate very low when gear typically is first installed. That increases over time as the gear gets older. And there's a red line here that we show what we call early failure or infant mortality, whereas the fact is you can get bad components and bad gear that has a failure rate right out of the box, but over time, once that equipment kind of is burned in or replaced, its failure rate is typically low over the service life, so or that fades away. So the observed failure rate is kind of a smiley face. It can be initially a little high, but over the service life it goes to an acceptable level, and then towards the end starts to rise up again. And so again, we see that happen, time and again, where people hang on to gear past that window, and it just causes that those failures. And so some of the unexpected things that can impact, that unexpected downtime, loss of user productivity, loss of data that happens all the time, and then finding people to diagnose and repair some of those older systems, sourcing older or legacy components, that can be very challenging as gear continues to age.
Great. So what is the second biggest concern that you guys have found?
So the second biggest concern with hanging on to that older aging equipment is the maintenance costs, that they typically go up either directly or indirectly over the life of that gear. And so, as equipment ages, support costs definitely increase, but vendors know this. So vendors know the longer they have to support a piece of equipment, the more likely they're going to have to service it and or replace failed components. So their annual support contracts many times increase dramatically towards the end of that life for the aging gear. And many vendors will use that as a lever to kind of force people to buy new equipment. And so, lest we think that they're all just trying to, it's a money grab, it's really challenging if you think about a vendor who has to support legacy equipment, because they have employees that retire, they have new technical people they hire that maybe don't have that experience or knowledge on those legacy systems. So, eventually most of these systems for that reason go end of life. So another kind of indirect cost that we see is the cost of things like operating systems and firmware patches and updates that may no longer work, or you might not be able to get the latest version on the older systems. And so you might find yourself locked in to a system that is still working technically, but doesn't really have the latest features due to incompatibility with some of the older systems. And security updates are a really common casualty of aging systems. The older systems were designed at a time before really security was as forefront as it is today. So that's another big challenge.
Absolutely, yeah, and security's never been more important than it is right now, so that's great. And then finally, just take us through the third concern that you guys have found with aging infrastructure.
So the third concern is a tough one sometimes to realize until you finally upgrade it, and that's the concern of performance. So the cost of not transacting as fast as you can, or maybe as fast as your competitors can. Companies are losing money all the time due to underperforming equipment. And so we see this all the time, companies hanging on to old systems, people suffering from lower productivity, trying to use new applications on older systems. And so, you and I were talking earlier, it's analogous to the frog that you put in a pot of water and you turn the heat on. The frog doesn't really notice it getting hotter because that's their experience. So that is something that we see a lot of times. People don't realize how slow their systems are. We'll replace them and they'll see reports that used to take an hour to run now run in 10 minutes, and they're like, that's kind of interesting. Absolutely. So newer systems really, as IT has always been, about every 2 years, the performance literally doubles. Mm-hmm. So things like hard drives over the last 10 years, if you think about it, we've gone from spinning hard drives to solid state drives or SSDs. And now NVMe technology offers even more performance still. And so the great news is that these newer systems are much more higher performance, but also becoming more and more affordable as well. And so we see another example of this. We see users or organizations using older, like 1 gigabit networks, some of them 10 years or older, and they just don't understand how that impacts application performance, things like backup windows, and just productivity in general. And so as data sets continue to get larger in size and also more fidelity, meaning like higher resolution images and things like that, it's just really taking these systems and pushing them kind of to the limit. So, that's another downside of hanging on to that legacy platform.
Makes sense. With the digital economy and the amount of data and the amount of hackers there are in the world today, man, it sounds like there's a lot of indirect and direct costs to just consuming and using aging equipment that you won't know unless you really take a hard look at your decisions in your infrastructure.
For sure. And that's really, I think, some of the best consulting that we do is to understand what performance our customers need and help design simple, easy to manage, yet high performance systems that fit their budget. And many times it's you think you're saving money by hanging on to the old gear, but sometimes you find you're really limiting yourself. So we're all about return on investment for IT infrastructure spends, and that's kind of our business to help our customer realize that.
Great, and we've seen you guys do it time and time again. So, Craig, sure. Thanks so much for joining and being a valued violin partner.
Thank you, Kara. It was a pleasure being with you today. You have a great day.
Thanks, you too. For those of you watching, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Win with Violin. For questions around this topic and more, email us at winwithviolin@violinsystems.com.